All right, welcome back. Most recently, let's call it Wednesday, the 15th, right? The Supreme Court heard oral arguments in this Louisiana versus Callais, which is a case that challenges the use of race in redistricting. The conservative majority appeared skeptical of the practice of creating majority-minority districts to comply with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Now, liberal Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson compared efforts to draw congressional districts along racial lines to the way disabled people were granted easier access to buildings after the Americans with Disability Act, the ADA, became a law. The idea in Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is that we are responding to current-day manifestations of past and present decisions that disadvantage minorities and make it so that they don't have equal access to the voting system, right? Jackson said as she questioned a lawyer representing Louisiana voters who argued that the court ordered creations of second majority black district in the state violated the 14th Amendment by prioritizing racial composition in its boundaries. They're disabled, the justice said of the minority voters in the state. Wow. Oof. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Roger McEowen, just the man that I wanted to talk to about this. Roger, comparing those folks to people that were disabled, I thought was a little bit of a stretch, and that's me being kind. What say you?
So saith a justice on the Supreme Court. My point being that she's black and on the court. I think that's kind of like the No Kings rallies planned for tomorrow. If there was a king, there wouldn't be any rallies. I'm not sure the people have thought that through.
Right.
But, back to the core question here, the framers of the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, they didn't intend to enforce strict population quotas or equality in legislative districts. As long as the population alone determines representation in state governments, then heavily populated blue sections are going to always overpower and crowd out the interests of everyone else. This is the problem we have in rural America. You take any type of rural state, you can be basically voted out of existence by the urban centers. For example, in Kansas, we have a governor presently that's serving out her second term in another year or so. And most recent election, we've got 105 counties in Kansas, and I think she lost 97 or 98 of those counties. But here we are. You've got the 2 or 3 metro areas that determine who's going to win for the entire state. And that's a problem when you base it just on population. And that's not what the founders intended.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot like Chicago and the rest of Illinois, the same thing. That happens a lot as well in that representation of the downstate. Yeah.
Exactly. And California is the same way. My law students are amazed. I'll put up in the first class the red-blue county map of the most recent presidential election, and they always will comment, well, California's red. I say, yeah, it's predominantly red, but you've got the urban areas that control. Same thing like you said in Illinois. You cut out Cook County, and the rest of that state, with just a couple of exceptions, is entirely red. And so, the founders recognized that. That's why we have the Electoral College. And some states have kind of mirrored that in recent years. But when you get back to this, the Voting Rights Act, which is at the core of what this case is, yeah, that was enacted a number of years ago to deal with problems that were occurring in the South. And it's the Democratic Party that's historically relied on minority votes. And so they wanted, under this act, the minority voters to have an equal opportunity to elect representatives of their choice. And that's led to this creation of majority-minority districts. And in some cases, the districts are packed with a high percentage of specific racial or ethnic minorities to create a safe seat. But the problem you're going to have here, I kind of think the court's going to overturn this, and the state's going to win here. The state should have the freedom to draw the districts as they please, but the abuses of the Voting Rights Act have to be removed, and that abuse basically is it's imposed racialized districts to ensure minority groups have an ideal representative. So federal policy, and I think this is going to be at the core of the Supreme Court's opinion, federal policy should call for congressional districts to actually respect geographical and municipal boundaries, but forcing them to be race specific has to end. The Constitution guarantees a Republican form of government for every state. That's not democracy. We are not a democracy. We're a republic. And so a republic form is not one person, one vote. And so, they may go back and overturn a case from 1964 on that point. We'll see what happens. It's interesting times.
And what's your timing on that? I'm not familiar with how that works, but how long do we have to wait?
Well, I don't know if the court can get an opinion out quickly on this or not. If they do, it could impact the midterms. But the states, to have an impact on the midterms, the opinion would have to come out very early in 2026 for the states to then take the corrective action required to affect the midterms. So I'm not sure if they do overturn existing case law, whether it would affect the midterms or not. We'll just have to see how fast they move on it. And of course, they have the tariff case that's in front of this one. So, yeah, we'll actually behind it. But two big cases. Two big cases they need to fast track. Yeah, two big cases they need to fast track.
I was worried about both of those. You're right. I was worried about the timing on 2026 with the redistricting, and then also real quick. We got 10 seconds, but we have to worry about Trump's tariffs, are they legal or not? And that could be a big earth mover too. Real quick, 10 seconds before we go.
Oh, you're right. And I think I said this with you before. If they uphold the lower courts on the tariff decision and say the president can't do that, that's going to upset a lot of economics, including the bond market.
Ooh. Yeah, absolutely right. Boy, oh boy. Always great to have you on. And there seems to be more and more of these things that we need to have you on more and more often for. So thank you very much for coming on a Friday. Roger McEowen, coming to us from Topeka, Kansas. He's with Washburn Law. Thanks for being on. All right.